I am Jennie Joseph. I am a midwife and an activist. I fight for families. I fight for you. Perinatal means the time around birth and includes before pregnancy, during pregnancy, labor and delivery, postpartum, and any time in between. The perinatal pause provides the time to reflect on the root causes of where we are, where we've been, and to create strategies for how we can transform maternity care in America.
Well, hi, welcome, Kay Matthews. Oh, shades of blue. I'm so excited that you're here.
Yes.
Thank you for joining me today. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I really feel like inside of perinatal, in this perinatal world that we're talking about in terms of birth, basically from before pregnancy, during delivery, and postpartum, this whole perinatal spectrum of healthcare and concerns that we have, especially now in the United States around what's happening for people of color, Black women, Black families, Black communities. I'm so thrilled to have you because I know there's one expert in this area, it's you, when we're talking about perinatal mental health, maternal mental health.
Yes.
Talk to us. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I would second the notion around maternal mental health. For me is like first and foremost. Our brain health, which is something that we don't often think about, but in the context that the fact that our bodies don't work if our brain is not working,
Right.
And that's mental health. So when our mental health is challenged, we have to think about it in that context as well. Is like, what else is going to be affected by my mental health being challenged? And so I remember when I would always say we help women before, during, and after childbirth. People would say how before education. So we would prepare you to be able to know what could happen, not to scare you, because I think so often things that have stigma attached to them, we think, oh no, don't share that with them, you're going to scare them, especially when someone is pregnant. But it's not to scare, it's actually to educate, so you'll be able to identify when something is wrong. Right. One thing I know for sure is I know my body better than anybody, right? And so when we give folks the knowledge and the education around those warning signs, those things to watch out, we're just equipping you to be able to be proactive when something is happening in your body. That's simply it. And so maternal mental health, even for me coming into this space, folks would always be like, oh, I experienced infant loss, but that was the medical side. But the mental health piece of it is what almost took my life, because I was aimlessly trying to figure out, like, who am I and what am I supposed to do? Like, what's left? Like, really understanding that that moment in time really changed my life, like overall. And mentally, I was not prepared for that.
Right.
And so it was a rebuilding for me. And mentally to rebuild with no direction was very, very hard for me.
Well, this is the thing. I think in looking at this perspective from that perinatal place, from that, what I'm talking about is a perinatal pause, making sure that we all recognize to get any traction and change and movement inside of this issue, that we need to stop a minute. And so when you said just now that, the before, during, and after, that piece, that perinatal piece, really is where we need to double back down and do our work. There is a vast void, a gaping hole, and we rarely, if ever, put the two and two together.
Yeah.
So you had a personal experience that left you wandering, left you really just hanging, right? And can you talk about how that aha came for you and how you then translated that into what you're doing now as far as mental health and maternal care?
So for one, I just realized that although I am very special, I know that I was not the only one in the whole world feeling this way. And so because of that, that really was that really helped to push me forward. It really did. It made me want to just be like, I don't want anybody else to feel this way. So what can I do? Even though I was on my own road to recovery, I wanted to be able to share what I was learning about myself and have those conversations that no one was having. And then when I started having the conversations and understanding that even women in my own family had experienced loss.
That's right.
And then the conversations became, oh, I had a loss and this. And I was just like, man, where were these conversations in the beginning? But I also realized that in order to have a conversation, somebody has to be the starter. Right. And so it was like the kickoff for me having these conversations and understanding that it really wasn't about my birth and outcome. It was about my birth and experience. So I was someone who gave birth. That's how I experienced maternal mental health complications. And so everyone around me, though, was tying it to, well, you don't have a baby, so it must not definitely be maternal mental health. It can be postpartum depression because your baby died. And so that was the thing back then, though, because when you talked about depression around pregnancy and things like that, it was for those who had babies because that's all we ever saw. Yes. And that's not what it is. It's so much more than that. So I'm adamant about saying we focused on birthing experiences and not just outcomes.
Yeah, and we look at the morbidity and mortality in perinatal, in maternal health, and what we're seeing is vast majority of the morbidity or the poor health shows up postpartum and or in between, right? So you're exactly right, and it's really important that you stated it that way. We do have these preconceived ideas about what should be, and if you don't have a baby, like you don't belong. Like you're not even considered in that sphere, but yet that is the largest area where mental health is really playing a part, a detrimental part, because people are suffering and or dying with the mental health issues that are unaddressed, unacknowledged. How did you figure out after you started talking about it and you started hearing stories back from your family and close people? How did you figure out ways to bring this out into the broader community and ways to have an intervention in this area?
So I've always worked in the community. So I'm a retired chef and caterer for 23 years prior to retiring, but I always worked in the community. So I decided to host community baby showers, educate folks in that way. And then we would have everybody to make these baby cakes and we would give them out. But what I learned in those interactions, the most effective part of what we were doing was the conversations that were being had.
Yeah.
That is where our impact was most powerful, but also it was twofold because we were giving them both tools that they needed for their mental health and the tools that they needed physically by providing them with the supplies. So we learned early on that those two things went together. But where I most fit into was being able to have an open conversation and be honest and be real and not have to sugarcoat my words. And be like, I was protective of emotions, but not in a way that it was going to stall us out, but we wouldn't get the information just because someone was worried about, well, maybe they're going to take it too hard or it's too much. I wasn't worried about that. Yes. I was really more focused on equipping them with the things that they would need to know that no one shared with me because they either didn't know or they didn't know how.
Right.
And so merging those two things together, I just slowly started getting out in the community in that way, again, providing those supplies that were definitely needed and talking to the women and birthing individuals on how they are able to focus on their self as well. This event is for the baby, right? But it's also for you as well. We want to know how you're doing. What is it that you need? How are you feeling about the pregnancy? Right. How are you feeling after having the baby? So those two things came hand in hand. And so they not only just got things for their children, they got things for themselves as well.
Do you talk a little bit about that, almost like the giving permission to feel, to think, to ask yourself, and to express yourself?
I think so many people are waiting for someone to give them permission to do just that. Honestly, I gave myself permission because I realized that I did want to be here and I did want to have some type of quality of life and not just live. I really just wanted more. I feel like I deserved more than what I was given. And it was the motivation for me because from what I had seen prior to, is that childbirth was supposed to be this great experience and everything was going to be, roses and rainbows and unicorns. And no one ever really prepares you for when it's not that, when it's death certificates and choosing names and burial plots. No one shares those things with you. And so for me, I had to give myself permission, one, to take as much time as I needed, but while doing so, what part of me could actually help somebody along the way. So I was on my own road to recovery while helping others, and getting to a point where I understood that I could only give so much, because I too I was in recovery and still finding my way and what I wanted to do. But I was able to do that twofold. So it really was like a brick by brick building process for me, that I'm glad it worked out that way, because it allowed me the opportunity to learn and be concrete about why I'm doing this.
That's right.
And no one could try to sell me on another way to do it. No, I did this when no one was giving me funding, or I didn't even know about funding. I didn't know that, I could turn this into an organization. I was just doing it and building it and seeing, like, really honestly having that time to figure out what's working, really being out in the community. Luckily for me, an organization allowed me to come in for 2 years to do like a pilot project. I didn't even call it a pilot project like that. I was just like, can I come in and try and see if this works? Because this is what I learned in my own experience. And they said yes, and they just worked for 2 years. And as I built that out, that's really, but see, I didn't have any reporting to do. I didn't have all these things to do. I could organically do it without any restrictions or any deadlines to meet, except for the ones that I placed on myself around growth. My only deadlines to meet were, is this thing growing? Are we going in the right direction? Are we actually figuring out, is this thing that we're doing working? What do we need to change, like right now, and not wait? And so I had that opportunity to do that during that time, because what I learned, I turned into journaling, because I was the writer, and that's how I really honestly got myself back on track. And I wanted to see if others could use journaling to help them. And throughout that time, we created 4 different journal covers, because some of the covers initially were triggering, even to myself. I was like, this is great. And then I was like, every time I look at this journal, I don't want to pick it up. And so then we, started listening to the feedback, and the one that we ended up landing on, which is where we've been now, for 5+ years, is the one that the community created.
Right.
It is really with the community, for the community. It's all of that in trial into one. It's all the feedback that we received in that time period and over the past years, because we update accordingly. And so the cover just changes, but what's inside of it never does, because that's what's working.
It's so powerful when you think about inside of what you were suffering personally, you took that time and turned this into what is now Shades of Blue project, right? I look at these things and I ask myself, because this is why I feel like the need to push for the pause, the stopping enough to just hang on a minute, let's get to the reality. I mean, it's not everybody's reality that's grieving or is depressed, overwhelmed, anxious, to be able to stop, use that time to reinvent their entire selves, create a program, build out a community model that is saving lives. Not everybody can do that, clearly. We understand that. But yet, inside of the pause is where something else shows up.
Yes.
I want to explore with you, like, how, because obviously you were already suffering yourself, but you were able to push through. How do you talk to folk who aren't going to be the ones that are necessarily moving into that productive space while they're recovering and healing? What do you share with them? What do you do with them? How does your organization work with them to meet them where they are and allow that space, hold that space for them to do it at their pace, in their way?
It's exactly what you just said, doing it at their pace, in their way. There's no one size fits all approach to anything out here. Although we have a method, we still have to finagle with that method in order for it to work. You move at your own pace. That's what recovery is. And not enough of that is told to us, is that there's going to be triggers in your recovery process. What we what we train or what we try to reiterate is you're gonna have some good days and some bad days and whatever that looks like for you. What we don't want you to do is stay stuck in that moment, because it could just simply be a moment. And those moments will come and they don't plan. You don't know what day or what time. They just show up when they want to show up. And it's really about getting you to a place where you understand that this is not all that my life is, and that it doesn't have to 100% consume me. And if it does in that 1 day time period, that's okay too. Lean into it so you can get through it. Because it's not going anywhere. We just get better day to day on how to manage it. It's really about managed care. We talk about managed care. I don't think we really understand managed care is individualized care to me. And so there's no one size fits all approach to this. We just have a foundation. So our Inspire method is the foundation. Now, how we use it with you and the next person is always going to be different.
Right.
It's just the blueprint. So we created a blueprint that can be adjusted to every single person in what it is that they need, but getting folks to understand that nothing, you don't recover overnight.
Right.
And that it is going to be a continuum process. And so that's why individualized care to us is very important.
Yeah.
And that our clients are treated as one and not as number 86.
That's right.
It doesn't work like that for us. We don't yield any type of results. There's no one going into recovery when there's a one size fits all approach, and that the conversations are stagnant, just recycle in and out day for day. That's not how we interact. And that's not what I personally needed. So I ensure that staff is trained accordingly as well, is that this person on the phone is a person on the phone you're talking. They're not like the person before,
right?
And they're not definitely certainly like the person after. You're talking to this person, getting what it is that they need, and that's the needs that we are meeting, and it's never going to be the same.
And given the size of the problem, and I think even the size of the unnamed problem,
right?
Because we have so much work to do to even get to naming what is wrong and what the genesis is of what is wrong. Given the size and the one-on-one nature that will be absolutely the only way to healing, liberation, right? Peace, all of the total well-being that we're looking for each birthing and individual. How do we get that movement built that will fill this gap? Because this gap is so vast, given this size, given how, we don't want to veer off into doing carbon copy, cookie cutter types of programs, replicating things that we already know don't work. How do we tackle this problem?
It's going to have to be a true collective effort. We have to honestly see where everyone fits and the part that is played. It's like capacity building.
Yes.
On an organizational level, or what is happening out in our community, what is needed, and who can we pull in to help us do that. And so who has the capacity to do what, without thinking that if someone else comes in and does it, that means that this person over here is not needed. No. We're all needed in some capacity. It's just really honestly about honing in on what your niche is. And so you fit into that place. And so this is a collective effort that has to take place of us valuing what we all bring to the table, and that collectively for the greater good. Because there's no one of us that can do this thing. Hell, I don't want to keep doing this thing. I'm unapologetically Black. Every day I wake up, I don't get a choice. And so I will always talk about Black maternal mental health until there's no need to talk about it. And I'm only talking about it because we're leading the way in those numbers in a negative way. And so give me something else to talk about. But until then, this will be what needs to happen. But a collective effort is what I'd like to see. We need to bridge gaps around like services and how we deliver those things. But when there's this one big thing that's hanging over, you can't keep ignoring it.
Well, that's for sure.
And our mental health, I know it's like, I feel like it's an excuse now. Okay, 10 years ago when I would hear like, where do we send people? Who's doing it? That's really not it anymore. So that can't be the continuum of where do we send people? Who do we go? Well, one place that you can send them and one place that they could go, but there are others that are doing it.
Yes.
And if Google works for us to order our food online, it would certainly work for us to put in who's doing maternal mental health.
Right.
So it's the same concept, but it's going to have to be more collective and really working together in what that looks like with no competition.
Well, let's talk a little bit then about the impact of mental health on the providers.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in our perinatal health space, in our maternal health spaces, in our public health spaces. That's an issue.
Yes, because the instructions that we need as leaders is not really given unless you talk to me, because I'm going to tell you should only be operating in your overflow and not from your full cup. The full cup is for you to keep going and showing up, but giving from your overflow and understanding that you may want to do all the things and be all the things, but that's not how that works, because what's the quality of what you're doing? Like, oh yeah, you're doing a bunch of things, but are they really effective? And are you just doing them and say that you're doing them? Like, who's getting something back from those things that you are doing? And so understanding that what we call burnout is a real thing, but what we're going to start experiencing is beyond burnout.
Yeah.
It's already happening.
It's
already happening because, again, we don't see value in collective efforts. We don't see value in bringing them the person that, like, I know you're great at this. Would you mind collaborating so I don't have to do it? And then what do you need that I'm great at doing to help you out?
Right.
And so it can't be one-sided. It cannot be one-sided. This is a part of burnout too, because it's one-sided. I can give, but what are you giving me back?
Right.
And so I can't keep giving to you without getting anything in return. And I'm okay if that makes you feel uncomfortable, but it makes me feel uncomfortable too, to always be on the side of not getting.
That's
and
right.
Always giving.
Yes.
And so that's lending into our burnout too.
And I think we're caught up because we want to see some change. We need to see some change. These statistics cannot stand. You're absolutely right. And at the same time, we then go rushing headlong. And I don't know that we've really got a solid plan. I wonder if, part of this help and recovery that we want to offer to communities, that we want to see families being able to access, I'm wondering if it's contingent on us doing our part in terms of our own mental health. So we can find out ways to manage this sense of continual moral injury in doing this work and not being supported. This vicarious trauma that we feel, the families that are falling apart on our end, trying to help other families on theirs.
That's a real thing. The loss that comes along with burnout is immense right now. Like, we're seeing it, even though we're probably not talking about it out loud, but it's still happening around us. But that's why it's even more imperative for us to start looking within. And looking at what do we need for ourselves. It's being real selfish. I need people to be real, but I need us to be selfish. I need us to put ourselves first. Because how authentically are we showing up without it?
That's right.
We're just showing up. What's a body in the room if it's not engaged? A body in the room that's not engaged. But what does it look like when I'm at my best and I got enough rest, whatever that looks like, whether enough rest to you feels like 4 hours or 6 hours or 8. What does it look like for you to be in your entirety on what it is that you know that you need for yourself and showing up? It's different.
It is much different.
It's completely different. And it's your engagement is different as well. But that's the place that we have to get to, that we're going to lose a lot more if we don't ever get to a place where we understand that. And I'm just seeing leader burnout happening like day for day because this post-COVID era is different. We're still adjusting to just seeing people in real time. And what does that look like? What does that feel like? The anxiety is there. I said during COVID that people got introduced to their mental health.
Good point.
And there's a continuum of that now that we have to go back outside.
Yes.
And we have to get back to it, right? But it's necessary, or else we'll have a whole world of people who are reclusive and still experiencing mental health conditions that will happen behind closed doors that we'll never know.
That's right.
And that's the part. And so we have to get back to engaging with people, because whether we believe it or not, we need it.
That's right. We need to be in community.
Yes, we definitely need it. It is going to help to continue to fill up that cup I talk about, that you should only be operating from your overflow. Because if you don't have no overflow and you just have half an empty cup, that buildup is going to take you a while. And so you got to figure out, what do you need for yourself in order to do so. And so for me, a lesson that I learned is that I always have to put myself first. Because that's how I'm going to give you my best. And when I'm not at my best, I've learned to be honest with people that I'm not going to be able to do, even though I'll do, but I won't be able to do. There's times when I can do and times that I can't. And I have to extend that to everybody around me, my staff, because they have to show up for clients, right? I have to show up for them. They have to show up for clients. And if they're not at their best self and what it is that they need, or an environment where they can say, I'm not 100% today, can I go home? And the answer will always be yes, because if you're not 100+%, then who's getting the injustice? Both you and the clients. And so being understanding of that is that this work ain't going nowhere.
That's true.
Even when you rest, maybe you're gonna come back to more of it, but it's not gonna just dissipate because you took a break. And we have to understand that that's a real thing. And that what we need for ourselves has to take precedence over all of these other things, because that's how we're going to continue to fight the good fight. Because the fight not going nowhere. We've been fighting the fight for years as Black people.
Generations.
And it's still here.
Generations.
So, yeah.
Okay. Talk to us about the Inspire, the actual program. I know this, program is for working with families, but I also want you to talk a little bit about how you apply some of these Inspire principles to the staff, to the providers.
Yes, so the Inspire method we created is a journal-based program that we use, because what I had to figure out in all of these years is that what is my role and what percentage of someone's healing are we? And that's 5%. And so our responsibility is to give you good resources, have you connected with resources that are going to help you, not just hand off over here, go over here, and you figure it out for yourself. So we navigate all of those things first before that happens, and then building out a sustainable program that is, if we can't do anything else, we can certainly give you diapers and wipes, and that's a key component for your child. But the key component for you is having these weekly check-ins, having these support groups. So it's twofold. It's not just one-sided. Also helping you with who's in the family. We provide, clothing, things like that for everybody in the family. Dad got a new job. He needs work boots. We have those things. You need soap. We have the simplest basic necessities that most people struggle with. And yes, there are dollar stores and things like that. But what if they don't have $1?
Yeah.
Like $1 could be foreign, like having $100. And so thinking from that real down to earth perspective of what people's basic necessity is, those are the things that we offer. And then what I offer back into leadership and provider perspective is just how to implement the Inspire method into what it is you do. You do it for yourself first. Because I'm trying to teach you how to be selfish, how to get what it is that you need, which will lend to your better interaction with your clients, with your staff. With my staff, we have what we call the quiet room, and there's a sign that says our happy place. My staff, after a long day, a long call, whatever is needed, that's their happy place. They can go disconnect. If that means they need to take a 30-minute nap, because I did a nap study, and through that nap study, it said 15 minutes will reboot your whole system. And so every 15 minutes, if you need to take 15-minute nap, do what you need to do. Like 30. The more 15 minutes you add on, the more refueled you are. But giving them those times as well, because my mental health is important and so is theirs. And so across the board, it's full circle. That's collective effort. We will operate in a collective effort because it's necessary. I don't want them to just show up because it's a job. I want them to show up because this is what they want to do, and that there's benefit for them, and that they are too getting something for their own mental health, because their mental health is important as well. And so I am a firm believer in we provide for others, but we also must provide for ourselves. And so I think about it from the lens as those of us that are out here doing the work, and then those that are out here receiving the services from us that are doing the work. So it's twofold.
Yes, it is.
It's full circle.
It really is. Wow. I think, what's so clear is how, inside of the work that you're doing and the work that your teams are doing, we're staying in reality. Time to tell the truth. It's time to get back to basics. It's time to meet people wherever they are. Yes. There's so many just straightforward, simple tenets inside of all of this work, but you're holding them, and therefore you are able to make that change, make that transition from business as usual to business that's effective, long-lasting, and you use that word sustainable.
Yes.
And that one is a really important word, especially if we're going to keep talking about these perinatal and maternal health issues. So, wrapping up, tell us about your upcoming conference and what's happening there and why.
So we are the creators of Black Maternal Mental Health Week that happens during July 19th through the 25th. There's a 2-day summit that happens during that week. It is community-based, mental health focused across all spectrums. Like you're going to hear around mental health on all different fronts from all different ways. It's one of those things that we put together intentionally. We don't do it just to do it. We do it because it's necessary. Yes. And it's the same reason why we created Black Maternal Mental Health. There's a need for it. I honestly, 10 years from now, don't want there to be a need for it. Right. It's strictly around awareness and bringing folks together so we can combat this thing collectively. That's right. That's a word that I use. That's a word that I believe in. It is embedded in my actions. And so that is a week of actions. It's a week of understanding what is happening in our community around mental health as a whole, and then this real honing in on what happens in the pregnancy and postpartum period for women and birthing individuals. So it's a jam-packed week of education across the board, but it's necessary. It's necessary for us to be educated. It's necessary for us to be seen in the community, giving them education. Yes. So again, it comes back to us being full circle and really truly doing the things that our mission and our vision says that this is what we do. We don't just say it, we actually do it. And this week is one of those things where we just tell the world, like, hey, stop, listen, and then do. So yes, that is what that week is comprised of. We're always super excited to bring it and be able to engage with folks from all over, to be honest. Yeah. Looking at registration, people are coming from all over. So we're excited to see that and then engage with folks next month.
So the dates again?
July 19th through the 25th.
I want to congratulate you because you are the founder of Black Maternal Mental Health Week.
Thank you.
And that's really important. And how might people find you?
You can go to our website, is shadesofblueproject.org, and on all social media across the board is Shades of Blue Project.
Shades of Blue Project.
Yes.
Thank you, Kate Matthews.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming by.
Yes, I appreciate it.
Stay connected by following us on Instagram at I am Jennie Joseph, or visiting our website www.jenniejoseph.com.